Hello and welcome to this video. My name is David Thorne. This is now the third part in my JavaScript Basics for absolute beginners, where we're talking about the fundamental concepts of JavaScript. And as I've mentioned in the previous videos, this is for absolute beginners that want to have an hour's worth of video to give them everything that they really need to know to be able to learn JavaScript. And I promise you, if you watch this video 3 or 4 times, or all of the videos a few times, you will have a great understanding of moving on with JavaScript. And by the end of the week, you should be writing some really good JavaScript code. With that said, let's get started. So let's move on. Now we've got, and you can see here, it's telling us, hey, we can convert this, but an object constructor. This is more like old school way of doing it. And I would advise against doing it this way. And I would much prefer you do it in this way that it's trying to get you to do it. But we are creating a function or a class or an object, all right? Now, in JavaScript, it's more of an object. Now, the other way that we saw already is an object literal, and this is an actual object, all right? And this needs to be instantiated. And so they have different meanings, but I don't want to get into them right now. But this one, you actually have to create an object instance in memory for it. And object instances, for example, they have different values, okay? And they are different things. And we can say here, for example, that is David equal to David1, right? And we can also say here is David triple equals to David1. And if we run this, they have David 44. We have nearly the same name and so on. But if we run this, you'll see that David is it equal to David1? No. Is it equal to, as in, is it got the same value? And here, no. Even though they have the same content, they are not the same. All right, and JavaScript, it doesn't really like this pattern, but all I'm trying to say to you is that yes, they have the same content, all right, but they are not the same instance. They are 2 different instances. And if we change David one name to be then James here, and then we print out David name and then David one name, just to show you here, you'll see that we get David James, right? And if we put a breakpoint here as well, you will see that you've got an object here, David, and then you've got another one here, and they're different pieces in memory, all right? And this is all I want to try and tell you. I don't want to dive too deep into that because it does get a little bit technical very, very fast, all right? But I just want you to understand is that this doesn't necessarily work, this equal sign, when you come down to objects. You need to dig even further into it. But we'll look at that roughly a little bit later. So, as I said earlier, that undefined and null are not equal to each other, right? And so undefined is equal to each other. If we run this, you'll see that we've got true and false. And the double equal sign in JavaScript, it isn't tough enough, all right? But the triple equal sign is super, super tough, and it's strict, right? Which is saying that does the left value, is it equal to, this is what this is saying, is the left value equal to the right hand value? Well, it is. They don't have a value, okay? However, the final one is saying, do they also have the same type? Now, undefined and null, they are a primitive type. They're not the same primitive type. Undefined in JavaScript is a primitive type, and null is a primitive type, just like array, number, string, and so on are primitive types. Okay, Boolean as well, objects as well. But these do not have the same type, and they don't have the same value. Okay, so they do have the same value, but they don't have the same type, which is why this would turn out to be false. But undefined is equal to null, and this is always use the triple the triple equal sign, all right? And you will get so many problems. In other languages, that doesn't exist or they don't use it, but in JavaScript, when you do something, use triple equals always. So now we are down to having using map on array, and we've seen the for each already, and the map does basically something different. But what it's expecting though is a return value. For each didn't expect a return value. Now this is kind of like, if you know anything about lambdas and stuff like that. If you don't worry about it. But what this is doing is implicitly saying this, okay? Now, because it says, well, I know I'm going to get one parameter, and I know what number is, I don't need to know about the braces and the return type. As long as you are basically on one line, right? And can be inferred, it can be implied what exactly is happening. You don't need a return type. You don't need the curly braces. But if there's any ambiguousness about it, then you're going to have problems. You're going to have to use a return, all right? And sometimes you're going to have bugs because of it, so be very careful about this. Anyway, what happens here is that squares, so it's going to iterate once again, and if we look at this, you can see that it's got the 3 values once again, so we can say here number, index, and then L here, and it's going to go through and it's going to multiply it here, and if we output the squares, you'll see we've got squares 1, 4, 9, and 16 already, okay? So, but you're going to have to play around with these functions that are on arrays, okay? And they're super important in my opinion. I love them to bits. Where were we? Sparkling water, dates, person. We were here. So, number 24. We now come to use and set timeout. Set timeout can be really, really good if you don't want something to happen straight away. You want it to happen after a delayed amount of time, all right? And we are talking in milliseconds here, all right? So it says 2000 milliseconds, but obviously that means 2 seconds. And what's going to happen here is if we console logs here, let's just... I'd rather do by demonstration rather than do explanation. You see here that we get start and end. So this is running asynchronously. So the code is going to come to start. It's going to see this and it's going to go, no, don't worry, I'm going to keep going. And it comes to this. So this code is going to happen in the background, right? And it's going to happen after 2 seconds, 2000 milliseconds. And this is where you have to start thinking about, this is not multi-threading, okay? This is not multi-threading. But JavaScript has said, I will handle this in 2000 milliseconds, all right? But it's not. JavaScript is single-threaded. Single-threaded. I'm going to say it again. JavaScript is single-threaded. It's not multi-threaded. There's only other times, there's a small time where it's not. And the C++ is kicked in, all right? But that's another kettle of fish. Let's now come to example 25, for in loop. So we had the for loop and we've had the for each loop. And this is something where you want to be able to iterate through the keys, all right, of an object literal, okay? And so as we go through, it's saying, hey, give me every key, as in name and age, and if there were birth date or whatever down here. And what we can be able to do now is console.log key. So let's just come here and have a look for you. And so we can see here that within inside of this one block, we've got access to name, all right? And we still have access to person because this is a global scope up here, all right? We can see here that we've got person. Where is it? Person, sorry, local scope here. It's person, and we can access this. So as we go through, we're going to see name, David, and person, and we're accessing the object itself, and we're using the key value here. So we're going straight for the name, and we're getting the value, and then we're replacing this into the string. All right, but we've seen this already. So this is another way that you can iterate through object key value pairs. 26. Okay, once again, another high order function on arrays. This is then going to be filter, and this is doing exactly the same as what map does. However, if this predicate returns true, then this item in the list is going to be added to the the result. If the predicate here turns false, it's not going to be added to it. Okay, so as we go through and we see that number is modulus 2 is equal to 0. So we're saying, are you an even number? and it gets to 1 and it does that and goes, no, you are not equal to 0. 2, yes, you are equal to 0. 3, no, you're not. 4, yes, you are. 5, no, you're not. So when we output this, you'll see that we get 2 and 4. All right. So remember, this is a predicate, and you have to return true if you want that one item to be contained, all right, or included in this one new a version of it. All right. This numbers array is not getting mutated. It's not getting changed. It's not getting modified. All right. It's a new copy of those items. So this is then a subset of this, and this is a superset of this. All right. So this they're not linked, but even numbers will be a subset of this. Okay. Let's go on. Now we're going to start moving into classes, all right? And we saw the other objects before, but this is the correct way of doing it in today's programming, all right? And this is then a class of animal, and this is a blueprint to an object, all right? And this then dog is an object instance, and that's done through this new keyword, all right? And you're saying, hey, use this animal object blueprint here, and when you do this, this is then the constructor. So it's saying you can give me as many parameters as you want or arguments as you want, right? But you have to define them here. So if you wanted to then have a color or age or whatever here, you could do that. And we can then say this dot. So what we're doing is we are attaching a property onto this one object instance itself. And this is important, this object instance. And when we say the dog and then dog1, and we come here, you can see that there are two different object instances. And this is something that you really have to get into your head, that this object dog is not equal to this object dog1. Yes, if you compare the properties and the values with each other, they will be the same, all right? But they are not the same instance. And this is the most important thing, is that when you use new, they are not the same instance. And objects, there's a whole bunch of other rules to go with this, which is too much. It's another video in itself, all right? But this is then a function with inside of it. So you can see here, we can say then dog.speak. But you can only access this one speak method, right? This is not a function anymore. This is now a method, and class methods are what they're called. Now, a normal function would just be, as we've seen from the beginning, function greets. All right, this is a function, but this when there is a function within inside of a class, it then gets renamed to be a method instead. So when we say class methods or object methods, that's what it means. We don't say class functions or object functions. Okay, we all say methods. So there's a big distinction between the two. And here we are calling a class object or an object instance method. Okay, and dog.speak is not the same as dog1.speak. They're two different things. Okay, and that's what's really important here. So if we change dog1 to be then a cat. Yes, I understand one's saying it's a dog and one's saying it's a cat, but let's just change this then to be a cat and say cat speak, and then we can do this. We can see dog makes a sound, cat makes a sound, and we could use an if statement here, a switch this dot name, and here is then case. You could say then cat, and then you could say meow, and case dog, you could say then bark or whatever. So you could change it from here, all right? But there's a whole lot more to know about this, all right? 26 maybe, was it? 26, 20, 28. Okay, so there's always a place in your code where there's going to be an error, all right? And the best way to be able to do it is to throw an error. And so a function or a method, when something goes wrong, rather than saying console.error, whatever, you can force the execution to stop at that one place. And if we put a console.log here and say hello world, Visual Studio Code is also going to make it a little bit fainter to say, hey, this is never going to be reached because this thrown an error. And we can run this and it's just going to say an error occurred, which is what is here. And if we just put loads of crap after that and run it again, whoops, we run it again, you'll see error occurred, SSSS, and so on. So this is a way of being able to stop execution of code if it gets any further. And you could have like here, is len1 to do this, and then it comes here, and then otherwise it would then continue. Let's see here, it's hello world. And we now know what's going to happen with this. An error has occurred. But if we say if 0, right, we now get hello world because it comes down here and this error message doesn't come because 0 is the same as false and 1 is the same as true. So this error never occurred, right? So if the error did occur, throw an error. Otherwise, don't throw an error. But when an error does occur, you can catch it here and you can then handle what type of error it is. Very, very interesting way of writing code and a very, very good way of writing code as well. So now back to arrays again with another high order function. Now reduce can be super important to use. And what's going to happen here, if we want to know the count, the total of this one array, so 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, we can use reduce. And what we're saying here is this end variable, this is going to be the initial value, all right? And for every single item within inside of this one array, it's then going to iterate and it's going to call this one function. And you need to return the new value of this one here. So every single time it goes round, the accumulator is going to be the value that is going to get returned, all right? And when you return this, it gets to the next value. It's going to come to the accumulator again. And then this is then going to be the current value is the item in the list. So if we take this and we put a return statement here, and we do this, you'll see, and we'll just do let a is equal to accumulator and so on. So let's just run this. And you'll see a is equal to 0 because that's what it was in 0. And if we change this to be 150, right, and we now run it again, you'll see that a is 150, okay? And then we just let it go once again, and then we come back to return. You now see that a is 151 because in the previous one, we added the current value, which was 1. And we run it again. By no surprise, a is now 153 because we added 2 to it, all right? So it's super important that whatever you return is going to be this accumulator in the next value. And when it gets to the end of it, this is what is going to be the value. So essentially, whatever you put in here is going to be the data type of what comes out here. So if you're going to put an empty array in here and you want to add each item to the array, then you've got to make sure that you add it here as well, okay? But super interesting thing to use for different tasks. It's definitely something to have in your toolbox. Okay, event delegation. We've already seen get element by ID, and here we've got a unordered list with an ID of my list, and we're accessing it through the document object model, the DOM. All right, and we are adding an event listener of click, and then the function. This is then the handler that we're going to use. Now, all of these events all come with an E, so an event type here. And this is a mouse event, all right? And if we look here, you'll see that we get past a mouse event. And the target is basically referencing the item that has been clicked. And in this sense, it's going to be the items. You can't click this UI. You can only click the items inside of it. And if the target tag name is equal to li, which is this code is then going to get executed, and then there's going to be it's then going to output then the text content here. Now I didn't actually have a look what the difference is between text content and so on, but from my research it was better to use text content here rather than inner.html, but it's the same, or sorry, inner text and so on. But this is how you can go through a list like here, and also check to see whether the different items have their tag names or class names and so on. Yeah, and you also get the event as well. So well done. If you've watched this far, you've now done 30 examples of the fundamental concepts of JavaScript. Please don't forget to give this video a like or a subscribe. Comment down below as well if you do have any questions, any feedbacks, any concerns or anything like that about the content that I've done so far, or about content that maybe I missed out. But remember, there is another video to come as well. And if you do watch that other video and there's still stuff missed out, please make sure you let me know which things that you possibly thought I should have covered, and I've got no problem making an additional 10 examples going over these things. With that said, thank you very much for watching, and there'll be a link on the screen right now for the next video. So I will see you in the next video. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and goodbye.